All right. I think everyone has pretty much joined. Okay, ladies and gentlemen. I always feel a bit like John Anderson from the Gladiators when I say that, but welcome to today's webinar, AI Transformation for Business, How to Engage with Generative AI Responsibly and Practically. So this is the first in a new series of webinars covering AI transformation for business. We'll be diving into how you could and arguably should engage with AI in a business context. And there's going to be a strong focus on doing so in a safe and ethical manner. I'm just going to set my timer because I want to make sure that I don't finish late. Um, so apologies for not having that sorted out before. Um, Now, if you haven't received an invite to the other upcoming sessions and would like one, reach out after this and I will get you set up. Okay. So a quick intro on me. I am a commercial lawyer, also do some consultancy work. I'm a self-professed tech enthusiast and geek, and have always been frustrated by clunky systems, slow admin, business teams chained to their desks and overflowing inboxes, especially when it didn't need to be the case. And that's part of what drove me to this space, trying to help business teams work better. Obviously, technology plays a significant role in that area. Um, I'm not here to upsell AI. I'm probably more weary of it than the average person. I'm coming from a legal background with years of experience in regulated sectors, so I know the risks that need to be looked out for. The fact is that businesses don't really have a choice whether they use AI or not. AI is here. Your staff are going to use it. Your competition's going to use it. It's actually being forced on us already from Microsoft Office to choosing your groceries. Everything needs to be powered by AI already. Um, and it's moving fast, so we should take the opportunity now to get out in front of it. So this webinar is for employees across all teams who want to understand and use AI confidently and safely as part of their work. It's also for senior leaders looking to shape their AI transformation, their policies, their governance, and for business teams to bring knowledge back to their senior leaders, helping shape responsible, informed adoption from the ground up. Um, and there is a ton of hype out there, right? Even in researching this, I was kind of getting sick of there's just so much stuff. Everyone's jumped on the AI bandwagon. But this webinar is here to cut through the fog on AI. No fluff, just clear, straightforward understanding of what generative AI is, what it can do for business teams, how to assess and manage AI risks, and what safe adoption looks like. Now, as I say, there's an absolute multitude of seminars and webinars out there on AI. Some are decent, many are hype driven, and most of it are, to be honest, a little bit robotic. Ironically enough, it's like lots of people have gone into like ChatGPT to write their presentation on ChatGPT, and there's got to be a conflict of interest along there somewhere. But today's webinar, it's based on my own personal knowledge, research, experience. Um, I also challenge you to take a look at some of the pictures that I've pulled up and used in this slide because, or in this presentation, because all of them are actually made in Ideogram, which is a generative AI tool. And whilst you might see the veneer of authenticity and good quality work, if you do look a little bit closer on some of them, you will notice some errors. So yeah, I challenge you to take a look at those. The good news is that whilst AI is new in some respects, it is just a technology. My view is that businesses should adopt it in the same fashion and against the same criteria they adopt other technologies, taking into account, of course, the specific and the amplified AI related risks. So you're not going down this road alone, and many have already been there before. And the further good news is that there's plenty of established good practice already out there, which you can make use of, and that will prevent you from ending up as the cautionary tale on the front page of a data breach report. Um, but the governance strategy, to my mind, that has bubbled up to the top so far is something called the NIST 100-1, formerly known as the NIST AI Risk Management Framework. It's a globally recognized guideline developed by the US National Institute of Standards and Technology. The framework's built around four core functions, which are govern, map, measure, and manage, which provide a structured approach for identifying, assessing, and mitigating AI risks throughout the entire AI lifecycle. Um, at a high level, and I'm going to keep this very high level, the NIST emphasizes key principles such as transparency, explainability, safety and security, fairness and justice, privacy, data protection, and accountability. You can actually download that framework for free. It's a very useful resource. So these principles are widely accepted as foundational for trustworthy and responsible AI use. And there's strong international consensus around them as well, including significant alignment with UK and EU approaches. Now, I'm not advocating a global mandate for adopting this. Every business is different. For example, highly regulated sectors, amongst others, will need to assess a more bespoke option that fits their needs. That's fine. I understand that. But with that said, if you're looking for a safe starting point, the NIST 100-1, it's practical, it's internationally harmonized resource for AI risk management. It's an excellent foundation for businesses seeking to operationalize responsible AI use without reinventing the wheel. And just to build on that slightly, I'd also recommend you could take a look at the Osaka Digital Trust Ecosystem Framework, the DTEF, as it offers practical resources for building digital trust alongside NIST. Now, Osaka is the Information Systems Audit and Control Association, enthralling name. It's an international professional association focused on IT governance. It does provide free introductory guides and tools, but I should mention that full access to the framework and formal accreditation requires a payment. Full disclosure, I am not a member, and I am in no way affiliated. But I do find some of the resources in this area to be useful guidance for organizations looking to strengthen trust in their AI and technology initiatives. So, whether you like it or not, right? AI is not going away, right? Your staff and your co-workers are already using it, possibly on their work computers, possibly on their work phones, possibly without telling you. There is currently an ongoing race to the top for the tech giants to see who can dominate the AI space. And that's why you're seeing AI popping up literally on every app and every platform that you use. And you'd be forgiven for thinking that these shiny gadgets are ours to use for free. But there's always a but. They're not. We know this, right? So I'm adding a cautionary word of advice. And it's one we've seen before with smartphones and social media and basically everything else tech that we have these days. The tech giants want our time, they want our data, they want our privacy, right? That's the currency we use to pay for these tools. So my advice is to businesses and people alike, spend it wisely. I will be coming back to the data issue later in the webinar. But moving on for the moment, the point is that we are all responsible for adopting AI safely and smartly. Now, as I said, social media, smartphones, this isn't our first tech rodeo, right? So use the lessons from the past and apply them to the future. And again, that applies to our personal lives as well as professional. Now, this is not going to turn into one of those robots will take over the world speeches, not yet anyway. But I would like to travel back in time just for a moment. Bear with me, if you will. 1956, right? We're jumping into our DeLorean with Marty McFly, and we're going to find out where AI came from, right? So we've stepped out of our time machine. The year's 1956. IBM have launched the first ever computer with a hard drive. Now, prior to this, I think, might be wrong on this, but I think it was just paper ticketing systems, and that's what memory was based on. But this is the first ever computer with a hard drive built in. It cost a fortune. It literally weighed over a ton and had a whopping 5 megabytes of memory built in. 5 megabytes, right? Now, compare that to the storage on your smartphone in your pocket today. I think probably 250, maybe 500 gigabytes, maybe more. Um, anyway, the point of all this, 1956, that same year, the term artificial intelligence was coined. But this outlandish new phrase actually had its genesis in 1950 when Alan Turing posed the question of, can machines think? Now, fast forward to today, and arguably, I'd say, the jury is still out. Machines can do a lot of things that look like thinking. Um, they're mostly, however, just predicting responses or generating new output. Sorry, that's my stress ball for being on webinars, generating new output based on information that's gone before. They're predicting answers and responses to our questions using incredibly fast calculating power based on huge amounts of data. So remember that 5 megabytes, the IBM computer that's still on your screen. Well, ChatGPT and its competitors, they're trained on petabytes of data. Petabytes. Now, I won't go through the whole scale, but petabytes, very big. Okay, so generative AI, to boil it down, generates things, text, images, even ideas, videos, music. Although technically, it's when we refer to ideas, it's actually remixing old ideas into newer formats. Some people would disagree, but I mean, I would say that that's the gist. Um, tools like ChatGPT, they're not really thinking, not freely at least, not like a human might ponder and reflect. Um, you ask a question, and AI sifts through its training data, or generative AI sifts through its training data to figure out what answer most looks like the correct answer. So think of it like a hyper advanced version of autocomplete on your Microsoft Word or Outlook, but with better grammar and maybe a slight flair of brilliance here and there. So it is powerful, absolutely, but it's not without its flaws. And just a quick side note, when I refer to the likes of ChatGPT, please take that to include any of its competitors too, such as Microsoft's Copilot, Google's Gemini, Anthropic's Claude, Meta's Llama Perplexity, which is fantastic. That's to name a few. There are a multitude of competitors out there, small and large, and the list is just ever growing. So these are all generative AI. And just to paint a quick picture of where Gen AI sits in its own little ecosystem. If you look at the moving image, which the photo credit is still on that because I don't know how to make funky, cool moving images like that. But artificial intelligence is essentially a broad term for computer systems that can do tasks that we usually associate with human thinking, like understanding language, making decisions, spotting patterns. And within AI, machine learning is the part that lets computers learn from its own examples. Um, so they get better at tasks the more data they see. Taking that step further, you then have deep learning, which is built from having neural networks at its foundation. And that's a more advanced type of machine learning that uses networks inspired essentially by the human brain, helping with things like voice assistance and facial recognition. Um, and then going down to generative AI, that refers to AI that can actually create new content, such as text, images, music. Popular tools like ChatGPT are called LLMs, large language models, which are especially good at generating and understanding human language. And all these parts work together to power the AI tools that we would see in everyday apps from chatbots to recommendation engines. But in short, AI is made up of many connected technologies. It's very broad now. And the tools we use today are just the start of what's going to come in the future. So yeah, if anyone wants to get hold of this, I'll send it on to them after as well. So it's a really helpful sort of infograph to help understand the family of artificial intelligence. So why this matters now, right? Technologies come and go like the wind. We're all used to this. Why should we care so particularly about AI? And it's because the explosive development of generative AI is viewed as one of the big ones, right? So think Google search, smartphones, social media, and because it's arrived so quickly, we've hardly had a chance to stop and think. The majority of businesses are already on the back foot. Just as we were getting our heads around data privacy and protection, generative AI has turned up, and now we basically have what we're told is the potential for Jurassic Park, but with computers. So, I mean, I would say that this is going to be the single most disruptive technology to enter the business landscape in the whole of the next 10 years. So my advice would be, you either get clued up or you're going to get left behind. And just to share a quick story on that, I remember in a previous role, company I worked for, this is not going back too many years, but company I worked for had zero social media presence. They just didn't believe in it. They had a website, but it was real basic. They had no SEO, search engine optimization, no content strategy, nothing. They didn't understand the value and importance of their website as a tool to market their business. And I told them, spoke to management. I said, you really need to fix this. You're going to get left way behind. And they did not want to hear it. Technology, it's just a thing that'll come and go. Don't worry about it. Word of mouth is what we rely on, I think was their response. And years later, they were still playing catch up, throwing money and time at a problem, trying to build an online presence that should have been there from well before I pointed it out. And these things don't just happen overnight. You don't just build your online presence. You don't just, sorry, flash in the pan your online presence. You have to build it, and that takes time. So it is incredibly detrimental to sit around as these things evolve in front of you. And I've seen the same thing happening now with AI. And to prove it, all I have to do is throw out some terms that might sound like they're out of left field at the moment, but by the end of 2025, these are going to be firmly in your vernacular. Things like agentic AI, different from AI agents, so careful on that. Retrieval augmented generation, which is RAG. Cache augmented generation, which is CAG, CACHE, not cash as in money. Very large models, very small models. Businesses will be very keen to be using both, and particularly the latter, but like that's a whole other um, webinar topic. And human in the loop augmentation. Now, you don't need to know about these things just now, right? But take my word for it. When I say the AI revolution is only at the beginning, there's a lot more to come. And I'm talking about by the end of 2025, these are things that are going to be ever present. So the pace of change just now, it's admittedly tough to keep up with, right? But that means that ignoring AI isn't just like standing still. It's actually like moving backwards because everything else and everyone else is evolving so quickly. So don't be the person stood at the bottom of the elevator while everyone else is going up. Keep with the times and spend some effort on evolving um, as the AI scene evolves as well. So that has been a lot of doom and gloom, but let's flip to some positives, shall we? Okay, so uses today, some key ways that businesses are already using generative AI, email and calendar management, contract review and drafting, report summarization, document formatting, trend spotting, automating repetitive admin. Now, these things have something in common, and it's that they're all pretty basic, right? And that's an important part of the roadmap and one to note as it's the correct way for businesses to start their journey, right? My point here is that businesses getting ahead aren't the ones using AI. It will be the ones using it smartly and safely. Okay, so you've decided you're on board. That's been communicated to the staff. You're going down your AI transformation journey, right? What are the two reactions to avoid? Panic, it's going to take all of our jobs, or being dismissive, it won't affect us at all. Both are wrong. AI will replace some tasks, but that is far less true when we are talking about people being replaced. But I caveat that with the people who understand how to use it safely They're the ones that employers will want to keep around. So let's talk about governance. And yes, things will get a little bit dry, but bear with me because it matters. If you don't have an internal policy on generative AI, people will make up their own rules, and that leads to mistakes, sometimes big ones, like accidentally sending business sensitive data, or worse, personal data, clients' data, or employees' data into ChatGPT or one of its competitors. That opens the door to serious and legal reputational risks. You can't just ask for that back. It's gone. It's out the window, right? It's somewhere. You can't get it back. That's a big risk, and it's one you need to avoid. So, what should a basic AI governance policy cover? Now, this can get very detailed, but I'm only staying at high level for the purposes of today, right? But let's look at some basics. Which tools are approved? Which tools are not? What types of data can be used and what can't? Who is accountable for what? And setting out some clear do's and clear don'ts, right? This is not about red tape, but it's crucial to understand the safe way to engage with these tools without second guessing whether you're doing something wrong or doing something risky. You need to know where the guardrails are, right? And your staff need to know where the guardrails are. Furthermore, training staff on the use of generative AI is actually beneficial in their professional and their personal lives. So it's likely that by businesses contributing to their employee well-being, they're they're ticking one of these other boxes as well of for example their employee well-being policy, because this is learning that needs to go on a general level. It's not just business related. Okay, so speaking on risks, we're going to elaborate on that a little bit. I'm not going to try and cover all eventualities, but I will point out some of the key factors, right? AI can be wrong, and it can be confidently wrong, very confidently wrong. Just like a lawyer who loves um, to 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 pick a side of a good argument, no matter which side it is, generative AI has been seen to double down even when it's completely off the mark, right? We've seen some of the popular systems cite fake legal cases, invent laws, create false statements to support previous mistakes, and just general fabrication of content. Most people, I think, will have heard of the lawyer that stood up in court and unwittingly cited cases he got from ChatGPT that didn't exist. But aside from the high profile, there are actually hundreds and hundreds, thousands, if not millions, of errors on a smaller but still high risk scale. So, a contact of mine on LinkedIn recently posted on their feed about a court case report that had been released, and she asked one of the popular generative AI tools to summarize it. In its response, it included some reference to cryptocurrency. I forget exactly what it was, but it had zero to do with the case at all. The case was not remotely related to anything cryptocurrency, right? Gen AI had just completely fabricated this. And when my friend essentially confronted the tool, the tool doubled down on the point it created, and then it invented a falsehood to try and verify its own error. So it was like it was trying to lie its way out of being found out making a mistake. Now, it's very human, right? But it's also very worrying if that's one of our tools that we're relying on. So that's a real world example of hallucination and fabrication in AI output. So please do not trust blindly generative AI without verifying its response, even when it sounds confident. There are guardrails and safety checks that businesses can put in place. So this shouldn't deter the use, but it should distinguish between use and safe use. AI has also no concept of truth. It doesn't really know anything, not whether something's true or false or right or wrong or up or down. It generates responses based on patterns and data. It might sound right, but it's not always accurate. And just because it has the veneer of authenticity, it does not make it Einstein. And that's why you must fact check the outputs, especially in high risk or regulated contexts. context. And I cannot stress that enough. Another trap that people fall into is keeping, this is not so much an error of AI that it is actually a human error, I would say, but it is keeping AI generated waffle just because it sounds clever. The old waffle sandwich, right? Please, please don't do it because you are adding to the problem. One of the massive benefits of AI in business is that it will reduce admin. Don't diminish that by generating a 100-page report full of fluff when it could be said in 5 pages. Just like the lazy contract lawyer, and yes, lots of lawyer analogies today, who leaves every clause in a 50-page precedent instead of trimming it down to what's actually needed. This activity or this behavior doesn't do anyone any favors. More words does not equate to better content. So by just please retain your human value, weigh in, apply oversight, and act professionally. Um, I do want to touch quickly on deep research. I'm not sure if all the AI generative AI tools have something like this, but ChatGPT has a deep research feature, which you can pay for, which I did, and from all accounts, it's very impressive and thorough. Great for research, so I'm told, right? And I asked it to provide a report on some publicly available government documents. It takes much longer. It takes up to a 20-minute period to return a result, and it really is just churning through almost the entirety of the internet to get its responses. And when the deep research function had finished, almost all its sources it had provided me were from Wikipedia, and I knew that that was not the sole place for these sources because I knew they were publicly available. And I was looking at them and I was thinking, well, that might be right, it might be wrong. It's Wikipedia. I certainly wouldn't be using them in any work documents. But the report itself had this, as I say, this kind of veneer of authenticity. If I hadn't gone into all the sources, I might not have picked up that they were all from Wikipedia. So the content could have been like a load of garbage, really. But I don't know. But I also wasn't sure about the legitimacy of the links within Wikipedia. Why should I? But it seemed to me like ChatGPT had simply gone for the easiest accessible resources. So don't fall into the trap of over relying on citations. Just because it provides sources, it doesn't mean they're good ones or they're even real. Um, and when I say this veneer of authenticity, I think we should quickly talk about formatting. Now, I hate formatting. I cannot count the times I wanted to throw my laptop out of a window because I can't get a bullet point to align with the other bullet points on the page. However, for whatever reason, good formatting is something that humans put a lot of value in, right? And generative AI, it knows this. It's been taught this. And that in itself it presents a risk. There have actually been studies that have shown that if people are provided with a report with perfect grammar, perfect formatting, perfect spelling, they're actually more likely to overtrust it. Now, you compare that with my notes, composed of chicken scratch style writing and post-its, and you'd be forgiven for preferring the polished, well formatted version initially, even if it contains sprinkles of, absolute hogwash. So do not be seduced by the glitz and glamour of a nicely formatted document, and remember that typos equal human intervention. Um, a quick anecdotal observation I'd like to mention. I've worked with a few smaller businesses recently who have shown me contracts that they've made and admittedly made using ChatGPT for their business. These are non-legally qualified people who don't have a dedicated legal support function, so completely forgivable act. However, what's become clear to me is that a lot of these tools, in fact, all of the tools that I've encountered, are overwhelmingly trained on American documents. And any contracts lawyer worth their salt will be able to identify a US contract over, for example, a UK drafted contract. Their style and tone are just very, very different, regardless of what the jurisdiction clause says. And this can lead to a number of issues due to a difference in interpretation of phrases. And the point of this is generative AI will spit out the best answer it can retrieve for you based on the question you've asked. Its output will not always align with what you require to use the response for. So if you're using AI, always remember, use your judgment, validate everything. That is what separates you from the machine. And going on from that, I'm about to say quick rant, but there's been a lot of it going on. Do not outsource your intelligence, right? I would say that there are four, this is my view, but there are four key human skills that generative AI cannot do better than a human being. That is communication, creativity, critical thinking, and planning. So together, I call them the three C's and a P. It's a bit clunky, but I think it sticks. The importance of these, I would say, are self-evident, but just to give a quick example in planning, whilst there are aspects of planning generative AI can assist with, it is not a project manager. One bit of research was done on how generative AI would pull together a seating plan for a wedding compared with a human, and it failed miserably because it does not know that you can't sit the political cousin next to the conspiracy theorist granddad, or you can't put the recently divorced couple at the same table. These are challenges that humans need to manage, not machines. Um, if you hand these over to AI, you will lose what makes you valuable. I don't want to labor this point too much, but it is an important one. We have managed in our infinite wisdom to erode, for example, basic arithmetic abilities because we have a phone in our pocket all the time, right? My teacher used to say when I used a calculator, well, you're not going to be walking around with a calculator in your pocket all day. Well, it turns out she was wrong. I am walking around with a calculator in my pocket every single day. But she gets the last laugh because now my arithmetic is rubbish, absolute rubbish. Same goes for spelling. Autocorrect and spell check have significantly reduced our ability to spell, right? Studies have shown that to actually back all this up, and our basic intelligence is diminishing, and it's kind of at the onset of the introduction of smartphones and computers being so prevalent, and the internet. It's very interesting, but use AI to get the legwork done. Don't let it make decisions for you because it is a tool. It's not your brain. Let's spice things up a bit and talk about data, privacy, and protection, one of my favorite topics. So, firstly, if you are pasting internal business documents or data into ChatGPT, you've got to ask yourself, where is that data going? So, let's use personal example instead of a professional one, just to paint a picture here. Even something as innocent you might think is uploading your CV, that is not without risk. And it actually arguably has quite a significant risk because you're sharing your work history for the last 10 years, probably your location too, your email, your phone number, your LinkedIn, perhaps your home address, maybe even contactable references. And once it's out there forever. Um, And that's just a personal example. But from a business point of view, it's therefore critical to stick to secure, vetted tools approved through your internal processes and train people on safe usage. That's the data you're putting in. But what about the data coming out of generative AI that you use as an organization? So even when AI gives you a great looking output, you've got to ask yourself, is this compliant? We've touched on this slightly already, but is the source legitimate? But could we be breaching copyright or IP rights? There's a number of cases that are actually in the courts at the moment about how these large language models have been essentially stealing other people's IP, right? So could you be falling foul of breaching copyright or IP rights? I think we're in murky territory with training data and fair use. So I would say until the law catches up, treat AI generated content with the extra scrutiny. Remember the GDPR classics, right? If you're not being transparent, you're collecting too much data or processing without a lawful basis, you're not just wrong, you're in the regulatory sin bin, at least in the UK, you're breaking the law. So I would say tread with absolute caution when you're dealing with personalized or sensitive data. Transparency here is particularly tough if you're chucking a bunch of data into a machine that you're not familiar with. You don't know what's going on under the hood. So err on the side of caution. Don't let AI disrupt how you and your organization would normally handle data, and just make sure it is aligned with current laws and regulations. And again, always have human oversight, even for those small decisions. So some suggestions for what your information security, legal and compliance teams could be doing. Or if you don't have those teams or departments, what you should be thinking about as a business leader, or what you should be taking to your business leaders, right? Run AI impact assessments. So similar to DPIAs, but apply that methodology to AI impact assessments. Review the terms and conditions and licensing terms for any AI tools you're using. Do not let them pull the wool over your eyes. There's a lot of companies out there logging the software and the platforms that they will give you access to, and they'll tell you everything's fine and don't worry, we're SOC compliant and ISO compliant and all these things. But the devil is in the detail. I can't stress this enough. They are trying to sell you a tool. It doesn't mean that they are not inadvertently or potentially unwittingly or full knowingly breaking the law. And obviously, different jurisdictions as well can cause challenges in this area. So, just because it might be legal in a state in America might not be legal in the UK and vice versa. So also specifically keep an eye out for IP clauses, audit rights, security obligations, data retention. These are the sorts of clauses you want to look for in any terms and conditions or licensing terms applicable to the AI tools you're using. Okay. And finally, on that point, some continuous horizon scanning, monitoring for emerging regulations. Guidance is evolving quickly here. It is a tough job to keep up, but there are some really good resources out there that will keep you up to date, and it is important that you keep an eye on what regulations are coming out in the near future. Okay, and of course it is. Most important, starting to sound like a broken record here, embed human oversight in every AI decision, right? We're not at the stage yet of autonomous use, so don't act that like we are. Um, we're not there yet, and do not fall foul of over trusting the tools that you're using, right? Overconfidence is a big risk in this area. And it's not about blocking innovation. It's actually about enabling it, but doing so safely. Once the proper guardrails are in place, your organization, you'll be in a better position to scale your successes. And that's when you can, then it's off to the races, really. So it's all about getting those guardrails in place before you can develop further. Okay, so moving on to employee empowerment, specifically around prompting. It's probably not that new a concept or a word or a phrase to you now, but prompt engineering. Now, prompt engineering might sound fancy, but really it's just giving clear, specific instructions to an AI tool. Most people type vague prompts and get vague responses. So, as they say, rubbish data in, rubbish data out. A good prompt might be write me a one-page summary of common AI risks in HR for a UK-based tech company. Use UK English and focus on legal exposure. Now, that's clear. It sets context, tone, scope, and audience. So prompt engineering is going to become more and more prevalent. And the more you kind of use these tools, the better a feel you get for how you can structure your prompts, what's too much information, what's too little information. And remember that you know, if you're not clear about your request, you will get a vague answer. So yeah, prompt engineering is going to become more and more prevalent. But don't feel like this needs to become a role unto itself because it doesn't. If you think to employees in an office having to get used to typing on computers and email, this is something that became part of our everyday lives, and people built those in as skill sets. I remember not so long ago, you used to put on your CV if you were, if you could use the Microsoft Office suite. And now you wouldn't even think of really putting that in your on your CV unless it was like advanced Excel skills. Um, but don't feel like it needs to become a role unto itself. But it is worth getting out in front of this. The people that know it are going to do better in work than the people that don't know it. Put it that way. It's also interesting that slight tweaks in your prompt can lead to wildly different responses. Furthermore, different tools will give you quite different answers due to their different training models. So, if you compared output from Copilot to ChatGPT, you could find yourself getting very different answers for exactly the same question. So understanding how prompts work can provide immense benefit to business. Um, so I am actually doing a deep dive webinar on prompt engineering. So yeah, look out for that, which is coming soon. If you haven't received an invite, message me and I'll set you up with an invite on that. But it is actually quite an interesting topic, and there's some really good ways that you can use free tools at the moment just to test your understanding and your skills on prompt engineering. And again, the people that have got these skill sets are going to fare better than the people that don't. So, one of the big questions that people are always asking is AI going to take my job? And I would say quite confidently, no, it's not. But companies that train their people to use it well will outperform those that don't. So, the message to you is to train your people, upskill your teams. Prompting is becoming, as I say, the must-have skill, just like typing was back in the day. So, dedicate some time and effort to the new skill on the block. That's what I would say. The return on investment for companies isn't going to be fewer jobs and um, that they have to employ fewer people. It's going to be fewer bottlenecks, better output, happier employees. And let's face it, no one in the world wants to spend hours doing dull, repetitive admin tasks. We weren't built for it, especially not formatting bullet points. Um, with the right use of AI, that will become a thing of the past. So yeah, let's stay on track for that. Um, Moving on to use cases and champions, some buzzwords thrown in there, I know, but these make up an important part of what your AI transformation journey will look like. There's a plethora of resources out there on how to capture your use cases, but in short, use cases are short, focused examples that describe what someone is trying to do and why. Like for me, as legal counsel, I want to summarize long contracts so I can brief my co-workers quickly. They're not just wish lists or features. They actually contextualize how a business can become more efficient and more successful. And the best way to collect them? Ah, ask your team and your stakeholders what frustrates them, what takes them too long, what would they love to offload? And you can start this today, right? Go back to your team, go back to your coworkers and ask, what's a repetitive task you do all the time, right? What could you get done instead if the repetitive task was easier or automated? That is a use case waiting to happen. So these are the building blocks of understanding how you can leverage AI. If you do nothing, you'll see no benefits. But if you and your team start collecting valuable user stories, you'll at least know what a successful outcome looks like. Then you can feed those into your AI transformation plan. So yeah, nominate AI champions in each team as well, because these are the people that are enthusiastic about this topic and they're curious. These people exist. Um, if you're here today, suggest that you're one to your boss. Um, Ask your boss to let you or these AI champions experiment, gather feedback, share what works and what doesn't, and make that part of your AI roadmap. And how do you actually start? Well, here's the playbook, right? Pick one annoying, repetitive task, test one tool safely with IT support in a controlled environment, train a few people really well on the basics of using generative AI and the tool that you've selected, and share the early wins to build momentum. Start simple and ensure you align with your AI policy. Don't throw, and this is the absolute do not do, don't throw AI at your riskiest or even your most complex work. Because if you push it out of its comfort zone or even out of your business comfort zone, you're only going to end up in negative territory. So instead, use it for low risk, high reward tasks, right? As I say, build confidence first, then grow with purpose. Right. So, final thoughts before we wrap up. I appreciate you coming along on this journey with me. Generative AI is not going to run your business, right? But it's not going to ruin your business either. It can, in fact, make your people sharper, faster, and far less buried in admin, right? And hopefully from today, you've got a good grasp of the following points. So, one, AI is here to stay. It will impact every business. Ignoring it means falling behind, but adopting it safely and thoughtfully can create real competitive advantage. Two, generative AI is powerful, but it's not infallible. Always verify outputs, maintain human oversight, and don't outsource core skills like critical thinking and judgment to the machines. Three, adopt AI as you would any transformative technology, right? Embed it into your enterprise-wide risk and governance frameworks rather than treating it as a siloed or standalone issue. And number four, smart, small, and practical launches of AI is how to go forward. Identify low risk, high impact use cases and empower your AI champions in your teams and focus on training and safe experimentation to build that momentum and confidence. And hopefully, by taking those points on, yeah, you will be able to go forward and learn from that. But if you are looking for resources, certainly take a look at those frameworks that I suggested before. And if you don't feel that those fit your needs, I would love it if you reached out to me. I'd love to know where you feel those don't work for you, and I'd be very happy to help with a bespoke framework that does suit your business needs. But look, folks, we've finally got tools that push back against the ever-growing admin monster that we've seen on, in our business as usual daily lives. So use the tools wisely and you'll create more time for strategy, creativity, and impact. And I think that will go a long way to evolving the business landscape for the better. After this session, I'll send out the slides and access to the recording. Like I say, if you'd like help choosing tools, testing use cases, rolling out safe adoption, or building AI strategy or policy, I'll be very happy to connect. There's my contact details up on the screen there. Thank you so much for joining. Appreciate you taking the time out of your days. Yeah, let's make generative AI work for you and for your business. Right, wrapping up on time. Thank you.